maids, au pairs, gardeners, babysitters, and other domestic workers to the wealthy. What's the weirdest thing you've seen rich people do behind closed doors? Gosh, where to start? The wife was driving through the home improvement part of the city and saw a sale on bathtubs. So she popped in and bought 3. As she was leaving, she saw another tub she liked and simply had to get that one too. She wasn't renovating a house at the time. They refused to throw away food. Used by and best before dates are completely ignored, to the point where I found a tin of seafood marinara which was 15 years out of date. They have a holiday home in the South Pacific and have a housekeeper clean it 3 times a week, yet they only visit 3-4 times a year. When they're not visiting, no one lives there. When the family go out for dinner, the father will happily pay for the expensive meals but not the drinks. The kids, who are all teens or older, have to pay him back for the drinks and he will send reminder messages about the amount. Yet when any of the kids offer to pay for the meal, he won't accept. The wife is a hoarder and will often take way more samples than any normal person. She always makes sure to take all the shampoo, soap etc from hotel rooms, and if she passes the housekeeping trolley, will grab as many as she can from there too. Yet she never uses them. They have a whole bathroom cupboard dedicated to samples. I know a lady who's discreetly rich. One of those that unless you knew the more expensive but quiet brands, you wouldn't be able to place her. She would wear designer jewelry sets to the gym. Anyway, her quirk was she liked Costa coffee, so she'd get one day, drink half of it, let it cool and then put the rest of it in the fridge, and reheat and drink the other half the next day. When she told us that she does this, and we asked her why, she laughed and said, "I'm just frugal." I've only babysat one time and it was for a friend of my grandparents. All I really had to do was hang out with their 8-year-old grandson for a night. Overall it was a pretty cool night. All we did was play 2K and Madden all night, so it wasn't bad. But anyway, this family wasn't like billionaire wealthy, but wealthy enough to where they left me an envelope with $500 in it and told me whatever I don't spend on food, I can keep. Wealthy enough to have sped off in a Maserati for the dinner they were at. Wealthy enough to have a pool, jacuzzi, and nice BBQ built into the backyard out back. You get the idea. They were just an old couple with some money, and they were taking their grandson's parents out to dinner one particular night. Leave me with $500, so I think to myself, I might as well splurge like 30 or 40 bucks on a meal for 2 and pocket the rest. I was like 17 or 18 at the time, so I can't say it was a negligible amount of money. Anyway, I take the kid outside to my car across the street, which, at the time, was my older brother's 2005 Toyota Corolla. He gets in, takes a look around, and goes, "Where's the button that moves the roof back? Sorry kid, no convertible here." He tells me that his parents only have convertible cars and that he's only been in one other car that isn't a convertible, and that he isn't my friend anymore. I thought that was pretty weird. Throughout the night, he did also make some interesting rich kid comments, such as asking if we could go to a restaurant that had steak on the menu. He revealed an interesting bit about his parents, saying that they keep talking about bringing him a sister when the time is right. Apparently the kid asked the dad when the right time was and he said when mommy stops being afraid. I then learned that the kid's mom and dad divorced about a year later. Felt bad. He was a cool kid, didn't really have that shitty spoiled vibe. More like an innocent, curious, steered wrong by his parents vibe. I was a babysitter for rich people once. Their silverware was constantly filthy and caked in what resembled peanut butter and regret. Their children were pleasant, but refused to brush their teeth more often than their hygiene impaired parents until I told them gross stories about gingivitis. The mom had a small Buddhist altar in the living room, but was also extremely vocal about her Christianity. Would repeat the experience. It was mostly getting paid to help with homework and watch Voltron and Pillow Forts. I used to be a live-in nanny for the CEO of a major German investment bank in Berlin. They were a lovely couple with a sweet baby girl, and they made me feel like part of the family from day one. They paid me well, had a separate car for me and weren't concerned by what I did in my spare time. They were very generous, lovely people. My only gripe is that they had strange eating habits. Some days they would have 3 enormous meals, and other days they would forget to eat all day. I was often too shy to say that I was hungry. My sister is a nanny for an NBA player and his wife. The wife called my sister at 9 PM to come to their house for an urgent matter. When my sister gets to their house, the wife tells her take the trash out. That's it. My sister drove an hour round trip to take out the trash. She has so many ridiculous stories about this family, but that one is my go-to. Edit. My sister signed an NDA, so I'm pretty sure I have to keep his name under wraps unless I want to shake down. Let's just say he's in his 20s and he seems like a decent guy. His wife is just an entitled, raging BTCH. I dated a very wealthy man. Nothing was out of reach for him, and he wasn't used to being told no for any reason. I broke up with him the day he pulled a gum out on his driver because the guy refuses to part with his beanie on a cold day. My ex wanted the beanie and could not understand why he could not just take it. Ducking weird dude. Once when I was a nanny, I was house sitting while the family was out of the country. The refrigerator in my apartment broke, so I packed up some perishables and brought them to the family's house to store them until the landlord could fix it. When I brought my groceries back to my place, I realized I had accidentally grabbed something that wasn't mine from the cheese drawer. It was a gallon Ziploc bag. Inside that was a smaller Ziploc bag. Inside that was a bundle of wax paper. Inside that was a bundle of plastic wrap. Inside that was another bundle of plastic wrap. Inside that was a bundle of tin foil. 7 layers deep, I found an old lump of fruitcake. I nannied for a New York City power couple in 2014. Both were corporate lawyers for national banks. The husband owned more socks than I had ever seen at one time in my life. Drawers upon drawers of them, all navy blue, black, and grey. Totally forget how they got their start in life. I used to work for a guy who ran his businesses into the ground and declared bankruptcy, more than once I believe. He then married rich and his wife paid for him to go to school for a decent certification. He now owns a business that's slowly failing because of how he runs it, but he and his wife still have plenty of family money, and they are well respected in the community. He complains non-stop about lazy millennials who are so entitled and think they deserve free stuff from the government. It bugged me so much to see how he was so dependent on grace and luck that just doesn't exist anymore. But he thought he was so much better than anyone who wanted a leg up. I once assisted a country manager of a big MLM company. He wanted me to book him a rental car until he gets his own car. He got so stressed out that the rental car can't accommodate him. It was last minute. His place was less than 5 minutes away from his work, if you walk. I work at a ski school office at a fancy ski resort in Colorado. I've had guests come in and get a private instructor just for them for 3 weeks straight at $1,000 a day and then throw the biggest hissy fit when their credit card declines a $20,000 charge. Trying to explain that their card company might think it's fraud and they lose their minds. I have a $200,000 limit, it shouldn't decline. Didn't work for them, but went to school with their son. The daughter was 19 and had gotten married, so the couple decided to have a test child that was a small monkey. That was already pretty weird, but then I learned that they also had a previous monkey before that. It had been playing in the laundry while the maid was loading clothes in the washer. Poor thing died. Makes me wonder why they didn't call the test child thing off after the first one died. During the summer while I was on vacation from college, I helped my mom at her first landscaping greenhouse job. We went to this particular lady's house in the rich part of town. Big antebellum home. She was a realtor and all that jazz. We called her Dragon Lady because she looked like a wrinkly old dragon, and she hoarded the most ridiculous jewelry and always wore it. Even in her pajamas. We were taking a job to fix up, replace nice shrubs and flowers that she was just tired of, her backyard. She was a terrible excuse of a human. Mean-spirited, snide comments, the works. But she had an inordinate amount of fresh young men always in and out of her house. Like the entire time we were there. Quite the variety. And if we ran into one, she always introduced them as her cousins and we were like, yeah, okay, sure, you old crusty bag. She would flounce around in sheer robes with little to cover anything underneath. The guys followed her around the house like they were on a leash. It was like she wanted us to see her because she was always in her sunroom being doted on by her cousins. Putting lotion on her reptilian skin, bringing her drinks, food, etc. Then when she was done with them, a slick nice Mercedes would pick them up. We only witnessed the car a couple times, but man, she was weird. And gross. She's probably a fossil by now, I guess. She was a relic then, and that was only like 7 years ago. My friend works for a tax lawyer for the obscenely wealthy. Their firm is one of those go-to places when you want to take advantage of tax havens. Think Panama, Luxembourg. He tells me one of their clients had an issue and called the people he always turns to for help. His lawyers. The problem? He bought a new jet and only just realized its entertainment system doesn't have a Blu-ray player. This was 5 years ago. Find someone that can fix it. Today. He had lawyers at 3 different firms searching for a solution that afternoon, all billed him for it, of course. I was a nanny for a really wealthy family. Their public face was polished and put together. My second day on the job, I noticed that there were really intricate alarms and lock systems on each of the kids' bedroom doors. It turns out the dad was a registered sex offender. The alarm systems would turn on and lock the kids' doors at 9:30 p.m. The mom had to use a special code to open them if the kids needed her during the night. They turned out to be a really ducked up family, so I was only a nanny for a year. Helped my mother-in-law, who was a maid once, with a very large mansion in NC. Beautiful house, amazing architecture. They traveled the world all the time. The kitchen had old appliances from the 70s. The wife's bathroom had a broken toilet seat that was duct taped together. The wife did not rewear her underwear. We were not to go in the basement. I peeked down there. There were clothes 3 foot deep in the basement where she took off her clothes and just threw them down there. Thousands of pairs of underwear. Very weird people. I was a nanny for an affluent family. They had a beautiful home and nice vehicles, and the kids all had lots of toys and new clothes, but while doing laundry one day I had to take a load of mom's cloths out of the dryer and every single pair of her panties had multiple holes in them. Not like no holes lol, but worn out, most tattered panties I've ever seen holes. Got curious and looked in her undergarment drawer, and this was par for the course and not just period panties. She was like a major high up in a huge company, and her panties looked worse than I would imagine a homeless person wearing. My dad is an electrician and has worked in some very rich houses. He did a job in one where the couple only drank very posh fresh coffee. Fair enough, who wouldn't? But they had a cleaner who was permitted 1 cup of coffee each day, but not their coffee. She had her own separate coffee, but it wasn't even a decent, if cheaper, brand. It was the cheapest possible sort to buy, as the Smart Press Instant or something. If a person comes to my flat, whether they are a friend or the plumber, they are a guest and they will drink whatever tea or coffee I drink because I see them as equals. My dad has told me that some of the stingiest people he knows are also the wealthiest. Former nanny for a very wealthy Silicon Valley family. The mom had recently married her new husband when I was hired. Husband was an older, wealthy lawyer and wife was in tech consulting. They were always really kind to me and the kids were good despite having insane privilege. Honestly, the only weird thing was that the parents were addicted to 5-hour energy and Coke Zero. I assume because they were total workaholics and needed the caffeine. I'd get texts at random hours just begging me to bring over Coke Zero and 5-hour energy. I'd purchase cases at a time and it would all be gone by the end of the week. The kids didn't touch the stuff, they made sure of it, so I know it was pretty much all the mom and stepdad. Wasn't really behind closed doors or anything, but I delivered furniture to a very rich person's mega house once, only to discover, as we were going from room to room, a few rooms were completely bare and empty. I didn't really register it at first because I figured we would be putting furniture in there with the load we were delivering, but that didn't happen, and I mentioned to a coworker how the one room was bigger than my living room and completely bare, and he said maybe they are getting stuff during another round, and the guy heard and said, nah, that room is staying empty, I have no use for it. Same with the others too. I couldn't really wrap my head around a lot of things after that. First off, to be rich enough to afford a house like that, then on top of that, purposefully have parts of your house go completely unused because you don't care about them. Like, why even buy a house that big then? Why overdo it and leave some of it unused? Why not just buy what you need and use it all? Rich people are weird. I grew up in a middle class family living in the richest parts of the country. A lot of my friends had incredibly rich parents. What I remember most of all was how weird some of them can be with money. They'd spend big money on some things then turn around to be incredibly frugal on something else. I knew people that wouldn't think twice about dropping €300k on a new car or putting in a sauna and swimming pool in their basement, but who wouldn't allow us more than half a bag of chips between the three of us. I was a nanny for a rich family in Vegas. The amount of food they wasted was crazy. One instance I can remember is the woman buying Monster energy drinks for her nephew who only visited her house maybe twice a year. The garage was stocked with cases of the stuff for the kid. When it went bad, they threw it out and bought more. Oh, there was also the time they had me run around and buy $25 gift certificates for their annual company Christmas party from 25 different places. In Las Vegas. 2 days before Christmas. That was fun. Edit. Woke up to questions about Monster drinks going bad. They maybe didn't go bad, but they had a drink by expiration date. The kid never went to their house enough to drink them all or even put a dent in the stash. They just tossed them and bought more. My husband used to work for a landscaping company. There was one lady he would always come home with crazy stories, like they paid a pilot year round just to be on standby in case they wanted to fly somewhere. Also, they apparently paid Google a fee every year to keep their property off of Google Maps. Also, if this is the same woman and I'm remembering correctly, she had 2 solid platinum reindeer for Christmas decorations. I was a nanny for a pretty affluent family for a summer, and on the whole they were really nice and great parents. 2 things stood out to me. On one occasion, they had family friends visiting with their 3 children, so I worked a full day taking care of the 5 kids while the 4 adults just hung out in the house, ostensibly working from home but really just drinking wine and hanging out. I understand occasionally having the nanny come while you're there so you can work well from home, but nannying 5 children whose parents were 10 feet away was a little absurd. The second thing is that they reused Ziploc bags. I honest to God probably spent at least 45 minutes a day washing, drying, and organizing their Ziploc bags. I have 2 jobs like this, and 2 stories. Job A: I'm a nanny. Family isn't overly rich or anything, really down to earth, but the dad keeps complaining on the down low to me whenever he has to see his in-laws. It's actually pretty funny. Job B: I guess I'm a PA for this woman who runs her own business. She just keeps buying things. Like she straight up bought me a new MacBook, then a Surface to use as the work computer, thinks $3,000 for website redesign is cheap and paid it up front. Maybe I'm just poor though, who knows. The family that regularly bought complicated Lego sets for their 5-year-old, and then assembled them for him because they were too complicated for a 5-year-old, while he looked on and complained they weren't doing it fast enough, still receive periodic installments of my pity and contempt. Like, dude, he's not learning anything except that mommy and daddy were put on the planet to please him, and he's not actually learning anything from the toys. They also bought the kid new toys once a week or so. I can't with some parents. I was about 16 and babysitting for an obviously well-off family. Father was a lawyer, not sure what the mother did. Weird couple. She was lanky and maybe 6 inches taller than him. He was short and fat and just a grumpy dude. Their 2 sons were wretched spoiled brats. They paid well, so I continued to babysit for them on and off for maybe 6 months. While I was admittedly snooping around this guy's office, I found a very intriguing treasure box about waist high on one of his several bookshelves. It wasn't locked and the contents are making me laugh as I type this. About ½ ounce of pot pink vibrator, metal big dig ring butt plug, several different types of pills scattered around the box, couple dozen Polaroids from what looked like a weird BDSM party in the 80s, including the couple doing weird fetish shit. Was hard to look them in the eyes after they got back that night. both because I smoked a joint of his grass and because I couldn't get the image of this lawyer with a ball gag getting paddled by his wife out of my head. Technically behind the garage door. Neighbor won the lottery. Nothing huge, but nice. He took the lump sum and upgraded his little ranch to have a big as garage and in-ground pool and cabana. Never was anyone there prior, but after, he had so many friends. One of the first things he bought was his dream car, a red Lamborghini. One day in the summer, he was having a party, and his friends wanted him to show it off, so he started it up, and was revving it in the garage when it caught fire. Burned the house to the ground, taking half the money he had in cash in duffel bags with it. Turns out, he didn't have insurance. Ended up using the rest of the winnings to rebuild his old house, but lost everything. Somehow he managed to push the Lambo out of the garage, and to this day, there's a half-burnt Lamborghini under a tarp in his backyard, 20 years later. I was a live-in groundskeeper for a wealthy eccentric for a while. He had 3 cars from old movies in his garage. One was from a Bond film. They were covered in layers of dust and trash. One of them was a convertible that had the top caved in by trash. Or some cars just totally neglected and forgotten. He also had a favorite dog kept frozen in a meat cooler, surrounded by decade-old frozen food items. I know about this stuff because the garage is where my equipment was. I only saw inside the proper house once. I lived in the keeper's housing. It was full of all this crystal, pewter, and silver tableware and decorative stuff. Easily hundreds of thousands of dollars in items just laying around in piles, like a ducking pirate movie. He was rarely there anyway. Once every 3 months he would swing in to pay bills and take care of other shit, then go back to France where he lived with his wife. A lesser man than I cold made out like a bandit just taking things here and there. The guy wouldn't have even noticed. I just did my job though. Even improved his property, because the guy before me was a lazy stoner. I was a stoner too, but I was the busybody kind. There was a serious lack of showering on the father's part. He worked from home 95% of the time and his office stunk. They also had absolutely no clue that I lived a 50-minute drive away, without traffic, up to 2 hours if there was a wreck, in a town they had lived in all their lives. I lived on a base, so it's not somewhere off the beaten path. They finally realized about a month before I moved away and were shocked at how far I drove. No clue. Made my day almost 13 hours for less than minimum wage. But they loved their kids and so did I, so what's to complain about? They were good employers, just clueless. I was also young and didn't really realize my worth. When I left, they were extremely sad to see me go. They did give me some high-ticket items after a few months, including a plane ticket for my own personal use. A few months after I left, they said they really didn't realize how awesome I was. They were quirky, but not terrible. The family I worked for had a nanny. Youngest daughter forced her nanny to push her around the entire property while she just emitted a high C note. The property was hundreds of acres and they were at it for quite a while. The breadwinner is the husband. Can't say what he does as I believed he wouldn't like that. Either way he was a menace to the trees. Would need work breaks so he'd grab a pole saw and go to town on random trees. Then he'd get bored and tell me to clear the piles he made and pretty the trees back up. This was also their 365-acre weekend home complete with dam-generated power that took them off-grid. They had a mansion in the big city, cottage in cottage country, and this property in farm country. Worked for a beverage distribution place in a very ritzy resort area for a while. Guy's assistant shows up and says he needs a pallet of Evian for his boss's house. No problem. We load it on the truck and drive it up to his house. After unloading we ask him where he wants it and he leads us into the garage and asks if we can help unload it. So we start downstocking and carry cases of this sheet into what I thought would be the kitchen or pantry. Nope. Straight through the house to the back deck. He was filling his hot tub with Evian. I used to work for a very wealthy woman taking care of her parents. The lady was an amazingly kind woman and had 5 kids. Her kids barely had any toys and they didn't have bed sheets on their beds. One of the boys played with a small penny bullet casing collection like they were toy soldiers. Another girl had a dollhouse but not dolls, so she used the billiard gonads from the pool table as dolls. I worked as a live-in nanny for a young couple and their 2 kids. The father was 28 and owned his own record label for Mexican artists and easily made $3 minus $4 mil per year. The mother was 26 and was famous on Instagram for flaunting their lavish lifestyle. They lived in a huge house in the middle of the desert, probably 30 minutes outside of the city they designed themselves, and it was honestly ridiculous. Each bedroom was so big it echoed and had its own private walk-in closet and ensuite bathroom, as well as access to a wraparound balcony that overlooked the courtyard. It was shaped like an hacienda. It had glass elevators, an indoor koi pond in the entryway, and in the courtyard they literally had a stage for the live music to perform when they had parties, and a covered sitting area big enough to accommodate 30 tables. Their kitchen had a walk-in refrigerator and enough oven stoves to run a restaurant. On the roof they had a helipad, and the guy owned like 4 helicopters. He had a Maserati, 2 Ferraris, one for his wife and one for him, and a rose gold Range Rover. They had parties every weekend. And not just cute cozy dinner parties, I'm talking 200-300 person, get so shit-faced you can barely stand parties. Live banda, Mexican music genre, so loud you can't hear yourself think, men in little groups taking strange pills, women all screaming and laughing, gossiping at the table as they bounced babies on their knees, etc. There was one party where the father decided to challenge 3 of his guests to a race behind his house in the desert with his Ferrari, and it flipped, but he was fine and was just hissed his car was damaged. There was another where people started jumping from the 2nd-story balcony to the pool fountain in the middle of the courtyard, and a guy broke his foot. I always had to attend these parties to watch the kids, get them juice when they said they were thirsty, supervise when they played with other kids, tuck them into bed when it got late and the adults were getting too wild for the kids to see. Every single weekend, the mother and father would fight and get into screaming matches. Usually the mother was mad he was making stupid decisions while under the influence, usually correct, and he would insist he was fine and she needed to stop trying to control him. She would go to bed mad, he'd stay up until 6 AM and finally crash then, and the next day they'd be fine like nothing happened. The mother was a very beautiful, mostly sweet though kind of airheaded girl who had gotten with the father in high school and loved to talk about how she went through highs and lows with him, even when they lived with his parents. She had an affinity for drama, and if there was a problem, she was all up in it. She pretended to hate the constant parties but also seemed to love the drama that came with them. She was absurdly glamorous and had a private makeup artist who did her makeup every day for Instagram, and she took him with her on vacations and everything. She had a ridiculous amount of clothes and shoes and would spend easily over $5k maybe every 2 weeks on shopping. She was super attached to her mom, and her mom visited every day as well as her 6 sisters. In fact, the both of them were attached to their families. The father also had his brother, sister, mother and all of his cousins he grew up with at the house daily. They practically lived there. Overall a very ditzy but well-meaning person. The father? Not so much. Apparently he was an asshole before the money, but after it only got worse. Loves partying, loves showing off materialistic things, doing dangerous things, that is, drag racing, and had no real regard for the well-being of his wife or kids because he assumed they'd be fine with his antics as long as he flung money at them. The guy wasted an excess amount of money fully staffing his house so he wouldn't have to do anything himself. He claimed it was because he was very busy with work running his label. He'd relax for 2 weeks straight, fly out to Mexico for 2 days, then repeat. Not a very demanding schedule. His staff included 2 cooks, 3 housekeepers, an assistant for the mother and an assistant for him, a nanny, that was me, a planner, the lady that makes their parties happen and plans their vacations and other stuff, and 4 security guards to watch his house. Seriously, he was super paranoid somebody was going to attack his house. Had a full-on security system with intricate locks to every door leading to the outside and security cameras and beefy, burly armed guards walking back and forth around his property. I worked for them for around 2 years. It was an easy enough job taking care of the kids as they were both under the age of 6 and were actually pretty well behaved despite the environment they were growing up in. Easy for a child to get spoiled and bratty, just a little girl and boy. Watching all the antics unfold was pretty entertaining. It was like having a front row seat to real life soap opera. But in the end, it turned out the security guards were for good reason, because the house ended up getting raided by the police twice on suspicion he was a drug dealer but never found any evidence, and some men tried breaking into the house and sent death threats. I really don't think he himself was a drug dealer. He made so much money from his legal business that he didn't need to, and he was probably too much of a wuss to do that anyway. But he definitely causally hung out with them, and I'm positive they were guests at his parties, and mixing with that just brings problems. I quit after the death threats fiasco because I feared for my own safety. I feel bad for the kids. Well, I've been in a couple really rich people's houses who have had fires. One is a semi-famous boxer, 2 world championship bouts, which he had sitting on his kitchen table. The weird part was, he had pictures of himself hanging all over the house. Not with his kids or his wife in the pictures, mind you. Just of him. It was weird. And another couple full on screamed at their kid because he allowed smoke to get into his trombone case. Not sure how he was supposed to prevent that, but whatever. They also lost their minds because the insurance company wouldn't pay to get them brand new handmade cabinets imported from Italy. One family lived in the middle of nowhere. Huge house, had a hot tub room, every bedroom had a walk-in closet and a bathroom suite, crazy stuff like that. But this guy absolutely loved his four-wheeler. He told me he paid to add an attached garage specifically for his four-wheeler. And the four-wheeler was the only thing allowed in the garage.